Can we talk astrology? This is an unofficial episode of my podcast, but we're bringing it to you live on Instagram. Thank you for anyone who's followed the podcast in its many iterations. We've been on YouTube, we've been on Facebook, we've done it here a couple times, and for all you avid podcast listeners, we are live on all streaming platforms as well. Good morning for everyone who is joining. So thank you to everyone who supported. My co-host has already joined, and so she'll be hopping on in a moment. But happy Saturday. It's October 26th. It's spooky season. It's National Pumpkin Day. I think I have finally accepted that it is sweater weather, but it's 80 degrees outside, so I get a little confused. But anyway, for National Pumpkin Day, I'm definitely going to hit up some community-based stuff with the kids today. We're going to visit some family. They'll have on their costumes, so I'm really excited. But today we are here to talk astrology, which is something that I have brought into my orbit, no pun intended, just to kind of add to my tool bucket to just move through this journey called life. Our guest will be joining us shortly, and I'm thrilled to have her. This conversation is perfect for spooky season, but it is applicable every day of the year. So put on your thinking caps and let's get ready to learn. Let's have fun with this. Mar, feel free to join. Let's see. Us, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you have comments, you have rebuttals, like we want to hear from you. And here she is. Hey, Mar.
Hello, how
Happy
are
Saturday.
you? Happy Saturday. We finally did it.
I know. We finally did it.
I
And I
know.
failed to give you your warm introduction. So I'm going to read through her bio really quick. For anyone listening to the audio version of this, we are live on IG right now. Our listening audience, again, if you have questions, comments, rebuttals, drop them in the chat. We want to have a conversation with you guys. If you're listening to us on the podcast version, it took some time to get this to you. And so we're super excited. Unofficial episode. But today's guest, Mar, is the founder of Mars and the Stars, where she combines the transformative power of astrology with a deep sense of connection to guide people towards self-discovery and alignment. Her work is all about helping people tap into their cosmic potential. And I am a student, and I've been a client, and so I can attest to the giftings that Mar has. But let me keep going here. With her unique approach to astrology and wellness, she brings insight that's both grounding, which is so important, and inspiring. We do a lot with inspiration, but the grounding is everything. Please welcome Mar officially to Can We Talk Astrology?
Oh my gosh, that was such a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. I'm super excited, obviously, to be here. It is like Scorpio season. I have a lot of Scorpio placements, so it's kind of like a
Woo-hoo.
lovely time to be on here and to chat all things astrology and yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
answer any questions that you may have.
So there may be some biases with all these Scorpio placements because as you know, I also have those placements. But Mara, before we get into the beautiful conversations that we tend to have, I kind of want to just break it down for folks who are listening or watching, just the basics of astrology.
Yeah.
And I just want to put this out there to folks, and Mark can speak on this much better than I can. But just like there are many forms of people who follow like the Bible, like there's several religions that come out of that, there are different types of astrology as well. And so I was laughing with a friend yesterday. I called him 2 days late for his birthday and I was like, "What's up, Scorpio?" And I was like, "Happy birthday." And he was like, "My birthday passed." And I was like,
Oh,
and then I was like, "You're a Scorpio, right?" He's like, "I don't know. I'm either a Libra or a Scorpio. I'm not sure." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like we've bonded on the fact that you're a Scorpio for the last like 4 years." And
yeah.
he was like, "I don't know. Some things say I'm Libra and some things say I'm Scorpio." And funny enough, when I've looked up my chart and other, I don't even want to get into it because I feel
Yeah.
well, because I know
We'll
we got
get
to
into
get
it
into this
later.
conversation. We'll
Yeah.
get into it later. But when I've looked up to my chart, I'm a Libra in Vedic astrology. And so anyway, I just
Yeah.
say whatever resonates, but I don't really know if that's what I'm supposed to say. But anyway, Mar, I want to just jump into the basics. If
Yeah.
you can just give us a simple definition of what astrology is.
Yeah, it's honestly the study of the celestial and the cosmos and the placements. Astrology goes back to like third millennium BCE. So, I mean, you want to think of this as like Mesopotamian times, and we've used astrology and the study of the stars to build civilizations. They've used it for political power and gain to, ensure that the crops are growing, like the Farmer's Almanac, and following kind of like every aspect of the celestial. So it's really about harmonizing with the cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
We're made of 60% water, so to think that we're exempt from this is kind of crazy. Because if the tides follow the phases of the moon, why wouldn't we be affected by that as well? And I think there's so many forms of astrology. It started off, in the region of Eurasia and traveled down the Silk Road, and this knowledge kind of moved into India, and where Vedic astrology was founded, and then fused into China and became lunar astrology, which is a fusion of everything. So when you look at astrology, there's no right or wrong practice. It's what resonates with the astrologer. It's what resonates with you. And
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, astrology is not a religion. So I think that's another thing that's kind of like a debunk aspect. Religion is, there's no figurehead, there's no single God that you worship when you practice astrology. It's your own spiritual practice that you have. And I think for myself, I have my own spiritual practice that I follow, and I respect my clients' wishes of God, source, spirit, whatever you believe. And I think it's just a matter of understanding how the celestial impacts you, how you could use it for your highest good and to achieve what you want in this lifetime, and move forward in alignment. So I think that's kind of a great way to say how to kind of work with this energy, and how to utilize astrology for your gain, essentially.
Yeah.
I love that quote that's like, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do.
Mm.
Because if you look at a lot of like album launches, you look at business states that are launched, they're usually coinciding with some major planetary aspect for someone. I laughed when, there was kind of like, oh, this person's launching an album. It's like, oh, it's on a new moon. I wonder why. And it's a harmonious transit for them.
Yeah.
So that's just something that people do utilize that in order to kind of get the max benefit. So it's really working in alignment with the cosmos.
I love that. Um, Let me jump into these basic questions, but I've already
Yeah.
got more questions for you. And I just got a shout out for those watching on the live. We have a mutual connector on the line, Jana, who is the reason that you and I know each other. I met you at Jana's house, what, like
Yes.
maybe a year plus ago.
Yes.
And I'm sure she's just like chuckling at us because it's like, it's kind of cool how divine things align, how things align, excuse me. But anyway, I have a couple things to say. One quick note, as you mentioned, religion, astrology is not a religion, but a lot of folks see the world through their religion, and which is
Mhm.
so understandable. And so for myself, who does not practice a religion currently, but was heavily involved in Christianity for most of my life, for the first 21 plus years, and still has a strong respect for it. And I noticed that a lot of my value systems came from that, a lot of the way that I function. And then there's a lot of things that I don't, practice within that world. But how I'm able to conceptualize God and then astrology for those watching who may have similar thought paths or patterns to me, the way
Mhm.
that I've been able to fit this into my practice is that I see it as just another tool in the tool bag. I look at it, and I could be wrong about this, Mara, but I almost look at it like science or the study of. I just see it as another thing on this planet that we're
Yeah.
able to look into. And so anything on this planet or outside of it that it was God created, because I do believe in creationism still. Um, don't know what I believe about the details, but I believe in the fact that God created the heavens and the earth and those things outside of it as well. um, the way that I'm able to make sense of this is that he must have ordained and put things into place in a way, because astrology resonates so much with me that I'm like, it has to be God breathed. It has to be something else that God gave us. But that's just my belief. Y'all could take it or throw it away. But let's jump into some more of these questions so we
Yeah.
can get into the more free flowing conversation. I just wanted to lay the foundation for folks. So, Mar has just defined what astrology is. Now, Mar, can you define and walk us through with what a birth chart is?
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
like
So
astrology 102 I'm learning, because a lot of people don't know what a birth chart is, but it's so important.
So the you're everyone's kind of like, I'm a sun in Leo or I'm a sun in Scorpio or, kind of everyone knows their sun sign. And there's always these aspect of like, I'm born on the cusp. I'm both signs. And I'm here to break it to everybody. There is no cusp. There are degrees. So either you're born at 0 degrees because there's 30 degrees in every single sign. So either you're 0 degrees, like at the very like anaretic degree, the critical degree of Scorpio. Maybe your friend is a 0 degree Scorpio, or maybe they're a 29 degree Libra, which means that they're very Libra, like very, very Libra aspects there with their sun sign. But then also, you're more than just your sun, your moon, and your rising. Your natal chart is really a snapshot of the time that you're born. It never changes because that's exactly the time that you're born. And there's so many aspects, as we call them, and dynamics that happen between, like interdynamics that happen between the planets. So when you look at your birth chart in totality and you start to look at these aspects, you start to notice maybe there's certain planets that you're more dominant. So I'm a Leo sun. That's never going to change. But when I look at my chart, I have so many Scorpio aspects that technically I'm a Scorpio dominant. I also, have aspects where I'm more like fixed sign dominant because I have more fixed signs in my chart, like Aries or when you get into, I don't want to jump ahead in this matter, but when you start kind of getting into looking at your sun, your moon, your rising, your Venus, and all of these planets, you start to really understand how this wonderful combination tells you more about yourself. And your natal chart is really that. It's to really understand who you are. It's to understand your astrological signature. It's to really figure out how you can move in flow and in alignment. And then you start to learn more about yourself. You start to realize how energy flows into your life in a very specific aspect. And then that's where you start to kind of work with it. And you start to, as like everyone says, you can manipulate energy and you want to reside in the higher octave of your chart, not in the lower. We all get caught up, and maybe do things and have behaviors that are not aligned. And it's really understanding how we kind of move through that, transmute that, and really be in a place that kind of brings what we want to manifest into fruition.
Got it. So what I hear you saying is that I grew up hearing about horoscopes. Then I heard, oh, what's your zodiac sign? What's your birthstone, etc. Right? And so I just find it important, at least for our first conversation together
Yeah.
publicly, to just really break it down in layman's terms. So if someone has told you that you're a Scorpio because you were born in November on the 18th, I'm totally using myself as an example. um, that that is one aspect of your full birth
Yeah.
chart. So, and Mar, you're going to have to correct me here because I know my understanding is limited on this. We have several different placements. One is your sun sign, and that is the zodiac that typically mass media will assign to you, right? So it'll be like, okay, you're a Scorpio. But then you also have the placement of the moon and several other placements. Am I saying this correctly?
Yeah.
Several other placements that make up your birth chart, which is based on the exact time and location that you were born in.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And I think everyone knows their sun and their moon, which are your luminaries. And it's kind of like, and you see the memes like, oh, I did this because I'm a moon in Gemini, or, that's my Scorpio moon. Sorry. And like, you want to kind of create an excuse for like the
Yeah,
bad behavior, right?
yeah,
Or for the good.
sure.
But I think it's like we're more than just that. We're like multidimensional beings. Like, why would we be just one aspect of ourselves? And then you start getting into It's like all of the major planets. And then there's the asteroids, there's the fixed stars. And they all work together in this harmonious kind of like cosmic symphony, right? And then when you have an astrologer take a look at that and they kind of explain all of these aspects, how they work together, and then you throw in the current transits that are moving around this wonderful astrological wheel, that gives you even more insight into what's coming into your field. So what's coming into your energy, what's coming into, your cosmic aura, or, that's how people utilize astrology to kind of in a predictive manner, right? And I think that's what a lot of people tend to utilize apps, or you get a calendar. Like I remember when I was younger, um, it was Susan Miller and Linda Goodman, and they're like the astrology like greats, and that's like what inspired me. But I would get the calendar. This is like before the apps, before the internet. And you would literally go and take a look at your calendar to see, okay, what's happening? How do I track this? How do I work with this energy? And it's to give you some kind of level of awareness, because when the energy's flowing, you want to push forward and you want to maximize during that time, right? It's like striking while the iron's hot. And when the energy is kind of not favorable, you really want to figure out what you need to work through, how you can work in tandem with this cosmic pause, if it's a retrograde, if it's some aspect of like what we call a square that puts like pressure. These are things that you look at. And if you have like a co-star or any of these apps, are like, today's a challenging day, or today's a wonderful harmonious day for love. That's kind of, they're interpreting all of these aspects in your chart. So
Mhm.
that's how you want to work with this. I think there's a lot of people who look at astrology or any kind of metaphysical aspect and feel like they need to create some kind of like it's demonized, or
Mhm.
there's some kind of religious aspect there that's tied to it. When in reality, everything in nature has a balance of positive and negative, of light and dark, and it's really about integration at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you want to utilize astrology for, is how do you integrate this into your life so you can really work in harmony? How do
Yeah.
you make what you want to happen in this lifetime feel like it's like on track, aligned? Like I would never personally, if I had a ton of maybe more challenging aspects. Let's say I wasn't born during a Mercury retrograde and I decided I'm going to put this project out into the world during a Mercury retrograde. Probably not going to be the best time to do it, because I'm going to run into so many kinks, so many snafus, maybe technological challenges. That's kind of like how you would want to work with this energy. And it gets really deep. It can get really intense when you start getting into all the transits. But like in layman's terms, why, it's like saying, why would you, hit the gas on a red light, right? It's like,
Yeah.
maybe we need to just like pause for a minute, think this through before we move forward. And that's how you want to use astrology.
Yeah. I'm gonna skip the rest of the questions because I feel like we hit on them, and I want to jump in. If you're, are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Great. I want to jump into the reading that I did with you last year because I kind of want to offer a personal testimony to the power of astrology, and then kind of tell the audience how I've been moving with it with my limited knowledge, because I don't study astrology every day. I couldn't explain it to y'all like Mar. Like I had to bring her on to even give this information. But I know it's been a value in my life probably for the last 2.5, 3 years. And it's funny, I want to side note that I was very resistant to it. One of my closest friends, she was very into she is very into astrology, and we grew up in the same atmospheres. And so when she first brought it to me, I'm like, isn't that shit demonic? Like what? Like I'm not, what is that? And I remember getting like,
Yeah.
I got weird with her
Oh
about it.
my
I
God.
got weird with her about it.
Yeah.
And then some time had passed, and I was like, okay, she had asked me, can I read your chart to you? And when I heard my birth chart read to me, I said, okay, that's interesting. Okay. And I've been able
Yeah.
to see that reaction from other people in my life, because I often, if the conversation goes on, I'm like, do you mind if I pull your birth chart for you? And I'll look it up. But you and I actually talked about, I might start to create boundaries with that moving forward. But we'll get
Yeah.
into that too. So, long story short, I was pretty resistant at first. And then I had started a radio show project, and I was like, girl, like, I want you to come in and do horoscopes on the show once a week. So I'm sure I said that wrong at the time. And I listened to a recording of it recently, and she just did such an awesome job. But she's like, a lot of work went into that 60-second clip. Like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And long story short, I didn't end up continuing with the radio project. And then she ended up purchasing me my first reading. And then another close friend of mine who actually practices Vedic,
Hmm.
I learned more things just chatting with him. He sent me more resources. I saw my chart in Vedic. And so I just got really interested in it. And I didn't settle on the Vedic side. I settled on what is the proper term for Western astrology? Is that the proper
Tropical.
term? Tropical. So, what we practice here in the US, everyone listening, is typically tropical astrology. Mark can correct me, all my language if I'm using it incorrectly, but Western astrology, I think in Western culture, we practice tropical mostly. I mean, you'll find different folks who do different things, but that's pretty much what majority of folks practice. So, long story short, I was open finally, and I started to read more things. I started to come at peace with some of the interests that I had in I want to watch my wording because some wording could be striking for people or shocking for people, but my interest in things that were
Hmm.
metaphysical, that were not necessarily religion based. And so I was visiting the crystal shop often. Still don't know too much about crystals, but my faith was activated to just do me and to explore and to take God along with me in that
Hmm.
process. And so I picked up some crystals along the way. I practiced smudging, which I've talked about on prior podcast episodes, and started to bring in bring in little bits of astrology. And the punchline here is that what I was able to do was, as I was going through a hard time. This is post breakup, post COVID, transition in my career. The last 2 3 years, I was able to accept myself.
Mm.
Okay, there are parts of me that I knew people would complain about when in conflict, would say things about, and I would either say that's not true, or I would be embarrassed of those. I just wouldn't deal with those parts of myself. And there is such a beauty. This is that transmutation, right? In being, for me, being Scorpio. Now, today, before I heard all the stereotypes about Scorpio, they're freak. First of all, they're freaks. Any man who asks me if I'm a Scorpio, I'm like, why are you asking? I don't even answer. Like, and I roll my eyes because I'm
No.
just like, certain things have been
Yeah.
like tainted, stereotypes take over, and people made up, and it's okay
Yeah.
because I feel like that's why we're doing this conversation. People don't have the
Yeah.
respect for it that it deserves. So y'all, Scorpios are sensual. Okay, when you are sensual, you are in touch with your senses. Okay, and
Like,
so
listen.
okay, so the passion, yes, the sex is good, yes. What
You're like, wait, I'm not gonna not put this out
Yeah,
there.
it's good if we are in touch with those parts of ourselves and we are healthy. I think for me, that's when the sex is good. When I am owning my power, I am confident in who I am comfortable with my partner, I feel that passion. It's a great time, right? But also, that seductive stereotype will cause folks to think you're ready at all times, and it's not the recipe that y'all think. So
Yeah.
debunked.
The
Debunked.
Zodiac stereotypes are very real, and I think that's kind of the aspect too that you look at is not every placement is exalted in there's 12 houses in astrology. So it's like you may be, Scorpio sun, but it may be in a placement that maybe is at detriment. So it's more challenging. It might be in
Yeah.
a house that is causes, more challenging aspects growing up. Might be a sun in the seventh house, which means you do better partnered and you need someone and friendships to bounce ideas off of. You
Is
need a sounding board in your life.
is
Like
my
these
son
are
in the seventh house?
your sun is not in
Are
the
you
seventh house,
okay?
no.
I thought you were calling me
But
out.
no, no, no. We're gonna keep that secret. And that's the
Keep
thing
going.
too. It's like a lot of people post like, here's a snapshot of my chart, and they put it on
Yeah.
social, and they're just like, I want someone to read me. And that's very, you want to be really careful because that's the essence of who you are, right? Not
Yes.
everyone should have access to you
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
Even getting your chart read, even for myself personally, I have, various practitioners that I work with that I allow them to do various modalities and work with
Mhm.
me, but it's a very select group of people that I allow to come into my energetic field, that I allow them to kind of take a look at things because it's a trust factor. You want to find someone that resonates with you. And
Yep.
when you're looking for an astrology reading, you really want to find someone that you trust. That if you're looking at their social media, if you're looking at their website, that you're just like, this is okay, this is somebody that I feel like it's going to resonate with me.
Yeah.
Um, and I always laugh because I remember when I, was kind of moving into facilitating this process for other people, I had wanted to get my chart read by this very famous astrologer. And I will not name the name, but I was like, yes. And I did this. And like, it was a gift from my husband. He spent quite a bit of money on this reading. All happened. My transits during that time, I had like literally so many planets moving through my 12th house, which is really this kind of house of the undoing, spiritual death, transformation. And I was essentially a mirror for everybody's fears at the time. So the reading
Mm.
that I had with that astrologer was not exempt from that. And it was probably the worst reading I've ever had in my life. And they said the most horrible things, and I couldn't figure it out. And I went to my mentor and I was like, this is what happened. And she called me out, which I love. And she was like, why are you trying to not use your gifts?
Mm.
Why are you trying to trust other people and telling you what you think is right? And also, you're in such a like little kind of like pocket of this like time period of this transit where you are literally just like a mirror to anybody who is having these kind of fears, who you're
Wow.
just kind of going to magnify that energy. So,
Yeah.
although these things are not true and this energy is not going to resonate for this particular person, there is something that it just came out and spewed out.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was really a big a big lesson for me to really understand that it's really important to, yes, you want to, work with somebody who's like amazing and has this wonderful following and like, oh my gosh, it's so great. But sometimes it just doesn't resonate. It's
Yeah.
really about using your intuition, finding the
Yeah.
right timing to call something in. And when it manifests, that's like the right time. So
Yeah.
I personally don't have gift cards on my website for people to gift a reading because you need to be ready. You want to really specifically say, this is the time. I'm doing this on my own volition. I want to make this happen. And I
Yeah.
want to gain insight into something that's happening in my life because it's such a private
Yeah.
thing. It's literally the essence of who you are.
A hundred
It's like
percent.
saying, it would be like taking a picture of your social security card and like posting on your Instagram and being like, I hope it's fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that personal, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I obviously you and I have had this conversation, and I think the punchline here, the lesson here, the point here is that if it doesn't resonate, get rid of it. If you read a meme or you get read by a famous astrologer, or anything in between, if it does not resonate or doesn't make sense, either get rid of it or put it on the shelf. Because if spirit, God, whatever your belief system is, needs you to know that, it will come back to you when it needs
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
That is,
1000%.
yeah, so yeah, so that's, and these birth charts that we made mention of, which I do encourage everyone to find out with find out what your natal chart is. Um, I will let Mara recommend the correct websites, because she knows a little bit more of the ins and outs of the industry. But find out what all your placements are, if you are looking to add astrology to your toolbox, so you can better understand yourself. And I just wanted to close on a note, that not close, but close on a comment that I was making earlier. The entirety, the snapshot for me has allowed me to accept self, and to what Mar called, well, not just Mar, but what I've learned from Mar is called to transmute this energy. And how to, so in accepting certain character traits about myself, the chart helped me understand things about myself that were already there. So it didn't tell me who I was. I mean, like it did, but I didn't just say, oh, I'm that because that's what the chart says. No, it already resonated. And so I was able to make sense of certain character traits and accept those things about myself and then start to move with them with grace. And I was able to grow in certain areas. Some of those things were just saying, girl, that's who you are. Like, yes, you have a strong opinion, and so um when you use your words, be aware of the listener, be aware of your tone, come with love, not with all this passion and energy that you just forget who's, that there's somebody on the other side of that's receiving that.
Yeah.
And so that's a process in itself. But I feel like in my career, that's a space where I've really just become hyper aware of who I am. And in dating at home, I am who I am. With my friends and family, I've also massaged that a bit. But anywho, just knowing who I am and getting that affirmation from the chart to say, this is who you are, and saying, okay, this is who I am. And now moving with her. I've just seen so much growth and self acceptance in the process. So that's just a little personal testimony of
No, and
the
that's like,
the benefit of
yeah.
knowing my
That's
chart.
exactly how you should really look and utilize astrology. I think that whenever I have a session with any of my clients, I think they're always just kind of like, okay, thanks for telling me about me. Or it's always like the comment of like, what a coincidence. I'm like, isn't it? Isn't it just a
Wait,
coincidence right now?
can we pause there? Okay, so when I went to Mar for the first time, it was on my birthday last year. I had been following her on social media. I've had conversations with her. But my first reading was on my birthday. And so Mar can get into why that's such an important, excuse me, time to have a reading. But Mar did not just tell me what to expect based on the time of year that it was, but she had told me things that had happened earlier that year and like within 12 months prior, and my jaw had just dropped because they were significant. This is what made me, I was already a believer, but this was like, okay, God, we rocking with this. I don't care what nobody says, because how can she tell me what I just went through? And it was very nonchalant. She was just very nonchalant about it. I was like, hold on, like, wait, that's exactly what happened. But it supported any pain that had come from that, any processing I was still doing. It just made sense of it. And so I think a good moment of pause from someone like me who's still learning, is to say that, and Mara's going to make this sound better and make more sense of it. But what I have experienced is that readings can provide you with information on the themes that are happening in your life at that time, what may be to come, and again, how to transmute or utilize that energy for maybe a project or to heal in a particular area. Or, I mean, the list goes on. This journey of life has so many different to dos.
Yeah.
And I feel like, again, I'm going to let Mara make this sound beautiful and put a bow on it, but I feel like um, you can utilize this tool to help you understand what you're going through, and how to move through it. With grace and it's very grounding, and someone like me needs a ton of grounding. And Mark can tell you why as well, why I need so much grounding,
Yeah.
but I'll let you respond to everything I just said.
Yeah, I mean, astrology is really like a tool for clarity. I always say clarity, confirmation, hope, and relief. You want to understand where you were, where you're going, what you're moving into, and presently, obviously how to kind of move through any of this energy. Everything is cyclical. There's a reason that the chart is like in, a wheel. Like we kind of go through astrological cycles and energy, and hopefully we're able to transmute that and move forward kind of through this process, this journey of life, and come out the other side feeling more whole, more connected, and complete. And, we're going through collectively massive change with a lot of these transits this year. And like next year is like a whole other level of change that's going to happen collectively. But it's really understanding how to move through that, how to work with that energy, and really, at the end of the day, are we learning our lesson? Are we really making sure that like we're not repeating the same, um, you know, behavioral traps and issues, or we're kind of trying to work through these things, right? It's really like an understanding of self when you start kind of getting into your chart and how things kind of come into your life. Um,
Can we
go
actually
ahead.
dive a little deeper? I want to speak, and sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt because I'm like maybe my transition was not like super clear. So what happens with timing and your chart to where you can tell me, or you can say that what you just said, like collectively we're going through this. Like
Hmm.
what's happening on the chart? Can you dive into that?
So
Like
when you look,
what are
yeah.
we looking at? What is it doing? Yeah.
So we have obviously like your natal chart,
Yeah.
and that never changes. And then the planets transit, they still continue to move and transit through. So it's all in how it aspects. So, like, let's say, for you right now, the sun is in Scorpio. So you're going to have your solar return. The sun is going to move to the exact degree of the time that you were born. Is it going to happen on your birthday? No, not exactly on your birthday, but
Mm,
it will be within that same kind of time period, because it's really going to give you, and your solar return chart gives you insight into what's happening over the next year.
mm,
So last year when I saw you, I was like, let's pull your solar return chart and see what's going on. And, um, you're also having your Mercury return. So you getting back into this podcasting and also wanting to be more social and utilize your voice. It all makes sense, right?
mm,
Telling your story is very important to you. That's so divinely timed because you're ready. Your Mercury return it's great because you're just like, I want to be able to share how I moved through, how I transmuted this energy, what happened to me, and give other people hope, relief,
love that.
clarity, confirmation, insight, etc. So these are things that when you have an astrologer looking at your chart, it really explains what's going on, right?
Mm,
It
mm-hmm,
gives you insight. All of us are collectively, because there's these interpersonal planets as we call them, like they move very slow, so it's Uranus, Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, like they take so long to transit. And right now we're closing a massive chapter collectively with Pluto leaving Capricorn and moving into Aquarius. So we're all going through a close of a massive chapter since 2008. Collectively, even the United States, it's the Pluto return. So we're seeing
mm,
huge transformation in the country. We're seeing systems fall apart and crumble because they need
mm,
to work for everybody. We're seeing, you know, things come up that are not great that we need to deal with collectively in order to move forward to create something more utopian, so to speak, with these aspects to moving into Aquarius. And where is the line of when technology helps us and also hinders us, right?
mm.
That's kind of going to be a theme for until 2042.
And I hope that word hinder, I hope that word hinder is not too crazy. The I'm
It's,
sorry,
yeah.
technology hindering us, because that's and it's crazy that that's a thing. Because I
Hmm.
think collectively we're at odds with that, right? Like I remember when the actors were striking just a few years back. In this capitalist society, we need to work.
Yeah.
And if this is the skill set that I have learned how to do and that
Hmm.
I have gotten paid for and I have fed my family,
Yep.
and now AI is taking over that, but
Hmm.
then there is this beauty on the things that AI can do that are beneficial, so that it's it kind of reminds me of the higher and lower octaves of even our
Yeah.
own aspects, right? So
It's the same thing
the
collectively.
same
Yeah.
thing collectively. Wow, that's really cool. You can plead the fifth on this, but do you have any insight on what's going to happen in about 2 weeks with this election?
I
Plead
get
the fifth if
asked
you need
this.
to.
I
Plead
know.
the
I will
fifth.
say this. I get asked this like all the time. And for some people, I tell them, and they are just like, no, like I don't want to hear what
Oh
you're telling
shit.
me. But
Oh
I will
shit.
say this. Um, there, this election, we may not know the full result of everything
I knew
until
you
next
were going to say
year.
that. Y'all might think I'm crazy. I knew you were about to say that. Keep
You're like,
going.
I knew this was going to
I knew
happen.
it.
And, that's something to be aware of, A. B, we are entering a period, the US itself, we're literally at the anaretic degree, the Pluto return. It's, what I call like the fall of capitalism, like we are, late stage capitalism, you gotta love it. But usually when you look at cyclical energy with Pluto returns, with any kind of country, any kind of civilization, this is the time where civilizations fall. And I don't want to say that in a negative aspect, but it's kind of like you have to let things and systems that are no longer working for us
Wow.
collectively fall so they could be rebuilt, so that way it could actually be purposeful for everyone, right? That's the purpose of that. We are also going to move next year in July. The US will have its Uranus return, and Uranus is very disruptive energy. So, are we moving into times that will not feel as structured as they had for the last, I would say like 15, 16 years? Absolutely. But with that also comes this journey into self discovery, into how we can utilize community, because Aquarius is very much around community. It's very much this aspect of like creating, like, this utopian environment, but it also is very much regarded to technology, to the higher mind. So, space exploration, travel, like really understanding all of these aspects that fall under Aquarius is really lovely. Um, and right now, we're kind of in the thick of it. We're in the pressure cooker, as I say, up until February of next year. So everyone's really feeling it. It's really important with Jupiter because it's in Gemini right now, but you watch how much you're consuming
Yes.
media, social
Yes.
media. What are you subscribing to? Are these your beliefs? Are you just absorbing it just because you see it? It's a
Yeah.
point where you really want to ground your
Yeah.
energy and
Yes.
try to tune out the noise so that way your head isn't spinning.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, especially if you don't have a lot of air in your chart, this time could feel very chaotic.
Yeah.
And you don't want this to set you off.
Yeah.
Mental health is important, your emotional health is important, your physical health is important. Keep your energy grounded. Try not to worry so much about the collective energy shifting. I know that sounds totally
Mm.
crazy
No,
because
that's great.
your personal chart and what you're going through, like literally your inner world reflects your outer world. So
Mm.
what you're moving through can sometimes trump the collective energy. And obviously, like, no pun intended there, but like, but like it is true. Like we've seen people during the most insane astrological collective transits become multimillionaires. They come into their purpose. They find like their true path. So
Oh my
don't
gosh.
discredit that from happening. And I think that there are clients that are like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean it's going to be my best year ever? Everything feels like it's crumbling. I'm like, that's not here nor there. Like, what's coming to you is like really good things. It's like, this is the time, but you have to kind of build a spiritual practice or a meditative practice or a holistic practice of grounding your energy and staying clear on what you think is going to keep you in that healthy space, right?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's like how I kind of like get people to understand like what we're moving through doesn't have to necessarily be so detrimental to your mental health.
Yeah. I love that, Mar. I love that. I love what's happening on the inside does not have to be reflective of what's happening on the outside. I
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. And that's a mic drop. No, I'm just kidding.
And we're ending this live. No, I'm just
And we're
kidding.
ending this live. I don't think we have any questions in the chat. Is there anything that you feel is important just for at least our first conversation on the internet to have for us to leave here?
I would say anybody who is looking to study astrology or anyone who's looking to get their chart read, really do your due diligence and find someone that resonates with you. I think it's really important to make sure that if you're choosing astrology as like your path, your purpose, your career, that you're really doing it from a place of facilitating this process of
Yep.
clarity, confirmation, and hope and relief for other people. Because if you're trying to do this to, I don't know, make a quick buck, become famous, whatever, like it's not going to always be in your favor. It's really a true place of being of service. Like this isn't my main source of income. This isn't my at the moment. And but this is not, you know, the end all be all for me. I think people get um, confused between purpose in your chart with your north and south node, which we can talk about a different time, and also your midheaven in your career. Sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. Um,
Mm,
and that's something that you know, we are so multifaceted. Why would you want to box yourself into something that's just one dimensional?
sure.
Like everyone has many talents. So utilize those. And if you're moving into this work with passion and purpose, it's always going to be like the natural consequence is always going to be abundance, right? In whatever capacity that means for you.
I love,
So
oh,
that's kind of
sorry.
like no. So that's kind of like where I let that live for that aspect of, you know, astrology and what you choose to do for your path and career.
Yeah,
And I will say this: there are people that say that you shouldn't practice astrology or be an astrologer until after you've had your Saturn return,
I've heard that.
um, because Saturn requires maturity. I
Mm,
think that is like a hot button issue because I feel like there's some people who are just so tapped in and so like wonderful and great at what they do, and that's like they've always been clear about their purpose, and maybe they have an exalted Saturn, you know, who knows. But I think that's something that maturity for Saturn doesn't happen until 35. So if you're not clear yet, it's okay because it takes that long to really figure out what Saturn's message is for you. Your north and south node, your purpose and your gifts, they start to kind of activate around the same time, around 35. So life doesn't start really until like your mid 30s, you guys. So, like, this is the time to really embrace your purpose, your path, your passions, like what you want to cultivate, because you don't have to have it all figured out. Your 20s are for like living your best life, you know?
I just had the craziest idea. Have you ever looked up Jesus's chart? Is there
That's
a way to look it up?
I don't, well, I think there's some people who've tried to look at that aspect. I personally am not really, that doesn't resonate with
That doesn't
me.
resonate with you. No, because
Because,
there's a
yeah,
significance. So there's a significance in the year that he died. That's kind of when he started his greatest work, but then he died. And so there's this have you've heard of the Jesus year? I'd be
Mhm.
interested to see like what his chart. I've seen you put other celebrities' charts up. And so
I
that's why
have,
I'm
yeah, and
like,
I like,
that's interesting. I get it. I get it.
yeah.
But for me, that's interesting. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, like the celebrity chart thing, like, so I have like a, I don't know, I have like a whole thing with it where I'm like, okay, let me see this. But then I also feel bad because I'm like, they didn't tell me I should look at this or give me like, they
Sure.
didn't give me the A-OK to look and see like what's going
It's
on.
for
Yeah,
research purposes
I
though.
know. So I try to like, I don't know, that's my own inner
No, I get
battle with that.
it.
But I think it's just like I find it very interesting, you know, all these astrological cycles, you know, just like with the eclipse pathways and everything that happens, like you can get so, you know, deep into all of these aspects and really understand everything. But and that's kind of where people go down the rabbit hole and they're like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? Like the dots are all connecting, it's all making
Yes.
sense. Um, and then that's when you have other people who are like, you're being really crazy. Like,
No, I have in time with others learned a lot of really cool things that are there's like what like the rabbit hole is to me interesting. I know for some people it could be a lot, but I find it to be so interesting. But I do
yeah,
put a lot of it on the shelf because back to your earlier point of like sometimes a lot of that it you just kind of go a little cuckoo,
yeah.
and I don't want to go cuckoo. So I
I mean,
to stay grounded. It's
yeah,
interesting, and then I put it back, and then I might pick it up again to find out a little
yeah.
more. But
I mean, I think that's like an interesting thing because in December, in the sign of Sagittarius, there's a point in the zodiac called the galactic center. And it's known as like source energy, Christ consciousness. It's a point that when people have aspects to that, they usually have like devoted ties to religion.
mm,
There are people who are like very faith-based and driven. And sometimes it's quite the opposite if it has like an afflicted aspect. But like my grandmother, you know, I grew up Catholic. She was born actually on her sun was conjunct the galactic center, and she was incredibly, incredibly religious, devout Catholic. And she, you know, it makes sense, you know, in looking when I looked at her birth chart, I was like, oh my gosh, like it all makes sense because that was like her root. That was the essence of who she was. That was her light and her way. And I think everybody has different really beautiful aspects of like how this works for them, how this plays into it, if
Yeah,
it's ancestral, you know, ties that you feel like you're here to, you know, move into more of like the occult or you know, kind of like divination practices. You can usually see that in people's charts. So I think it really just depends on the individual and their chart. There is no bad or good chart either. Some people are like, it's probably a bad chart, or there isn't. It's really all in how you look at it and trying to understand people, you know, and why they do what they
100%.
do.
100%. My friend who I told you kind of started this conversation about astrology with me just joined. And she's been on for a moment because she commented and it's called the Christ year.
Mm.
So I guess that's something I'll look more into. But Andrea, you're part of the reason that I'm so deep in the water now. I so appreciate you. And Mars, awesome. To close this conversation, we have on me and Mark's schedule 8 more minutes. We don't have to take up all that time. But to close this conversation, I just want to offer the community who's listening to the audio podcast or watching either live with us or back on Instagram. I want to offer some other tools that I have found that I have added to my toolbox. And Mar, if it's something you've looked into or you can resonate with, feel free to comment on that. But astrology was the first thing, and then I started to look into human design, which is really interesting. I have picked very lightly at the surface of numerology. It's something I want to look into more. And the one that I'm a little skeptical to say online because I know people consider it witchy, and I really don't care because it's something that I'm still learning about. But if I'm going to bring something triggering to the conversation I want to have information to back it up. And I don't have information on this, but I also have purchased a tarot deck and kind of dabbled with that. Just a little bit of a dabble. Don't know too much about it. The cool thing about tarot is that there's so many decks out there, and some of them will really resonate with different aspects of, I mean, different types of folks. So that's really cool. And then Oracle cards, I don't know too much about, but I know a lot of folks practice with Oracle cards as well. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it outside of religion, just different um, spiritual modalities that I've kind of just looked into. Some I'm going to keep in my practice, and some that was cool, you know. Um, but what I do want to open the floor up for in the future as I continue to bring experts to the audience is understanding these to see, you know, what y'all can pick up for yourself or just learn a little more about. Maybe you're kind of like me where you've scratched the surface on some of them and you need someone to clarify a couple things because that comes missing a lot when you just go to a store and you start picking stuff up, or where you're just online and you're running into memes and maybe a couple articles. It's really cool to have practitioners, which will segue me into highly recommending Mar. I so
Oh.
appreciate her because one big thing for me on my spiritual journey is boundaries. I um, am highly intuitive, grew up highly religious, and I'm highly sensitive because of all of that. And I just don't like a lot of people in my orbit. So even doing this was a lot for me, but I feel like it's important for, you know, anyone who will run into this to process. And so thank you, Mar, for being a beautiful model of what a spiritual practitioner should look like, and just continue in the vein. I know I don't have to tell you to do that, but I'm just kind of praising that in
Thank
you. Like,
you.
I feel like you are 100% authentically who you are, but you also respect people's energy field. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
so
So
sweet.
I highly
Thanks.
recommend her. And the reading was on point. So then there's that. The
Thank you
reading was
so
also
much.
on point. So I'm glad that we're back together a year later, but you know,
I
in the public
know.
eye, thank you for that private reading. And I'm sure I'll be back for some private stuff because I do have some questions about this love journey. So
I
anything else,
know.
Lauren?
Oh
before
my
we
gosh.
go?
I mean, like you guys can find me
Yes.
on my Instagram at Mar and the Stars. I'm kind of in between my two sites. So I have my site at currenthabitatdesign.com and or you can go on marandthestars.com. I write all my astrology posts on a Substack in a real detailed place if you want to subscribe to that. And that's the same thing, Mar and the Stars. And I also I want to say this because this all for me would not really be possible without like the love and cultivation of my dear friend Michael Cardenas of Old Ways. And he is just like so phenomenal and he's really helped me to really find my space in this journey. And I think it's really important on, social media to find people who um, really want to lift you up and really want to help you find, your niche, your path, your purpose, etc. So he's just kind of given me such a wonderful um, spotlight to share my astrological insights. And he's also been super great at just kind of giving me advice and moving into this spiritual based, practice, so to speak, because it is challenging to navigate through something that you love to do and working and facilitating this process and then also um, being comfortable with like the energetic exchange of money. And that's something that was very challenging for me when I first started, moving into astrology and this being something that I facilitated for other people. So just want to say thank you to him. He's so phenomenal.
I
And
love that.
yeah,
I love that.
that's all
Mentors
I
are
got.
so important in all of our journeys, so that's beautiful. um she keeps coming to my mind, so I just want to make mention. I know, but the Hood Hiller has been very helpful to my process, and I
Hmm.
think it's really fun to watch her process. So if you're just interested, and then some of the stuff she puts out online is just on point. She did a reading 2 weeks ago, and again, like I said, I'm not really ever, I don't, if an astrologer goes up online, goes live, and just starts doing reading for the general audience, I literally shut that stuff off or I shut down and I'm like, that's not for me. This last week was specifically for me, and I've been following her for a couple of years. Anyway,
I
she's a
love
fun one.
her. Yeah, I love her. I think she's phenomenal. She's incredibly talented and gifted. I love people who are trying to like uplift their culture, their collective. I think that's like so key. Um, for me, I'm trying to navigate through that space and see what that looks like as a Latina because it's really hard to find people that resonate with that, that don't want to make it into um, something that's kind of like a cosplay, you know?
Mm,
So it's hard to kind of find that and also figure out and navigate through it with so many different cultural aspects. But I love her. I think she's phenomenal. I got a chance to meet her at a live event and chat with her. And she just has a radiant energy to her, and she's really trying to just move in her purpose. So it's
yeah,
exciting to see people kind of move forward in their journey. And like it's
yeah,
like you said, some things resonate, some things don't.
yeah.
If it doesn't resonate, maybe the message isn't for you. Yeah.
Period. Period. And that wasn't to throw shade. I think it's just
No.
to highlight how we can what highlight how we should interact with these like certain individuals, but I think she's just, I'm very, oh, sorry, I thought someone was making a comment. I've been very blessed by her ministry lately because I feel like, to your point, she's black culture. She's black
Yeah.
culture from the spiritual aspect. She talks, it's so funny to me because she'll say her glory hallelujahs, but then she'll do a reading and it's like, I love that because
But that's like, yeah.
I'm the person to have gospel music on and smudge the house, which people would be like, "Girl, what?" So we could talk all day. Thank you, Mar. It is
Yeah.
it is an hour. We're at an hour. Thank you for joining
No,
me.
thank
This will be
you.
available as an audio podcast shortly. Thank you, Mar, and yeah, thank you
Bye,
so
you
much.
guys. Thank you.